The plea in the dark, the docking bay was almost empty, filled only with broken lights and the sound of dripping water. The human, a lone traveler named Daniel, stepped out of his small ship. He had come here looking for cheap fuel and maybe some spare parts. The station looked abandoned, its walls cracked, its air cold and stale. Daniel walked carefully, his boots echoing in the silence. He felt uneasy, like someone was watching him. His hand stayed near the old pistol on his belt. He had been to many strange stations in his life, but something about this one felt different, darker. Then he heard it. A sound so faint he almost thought it was his imagination. A whisper, small and weak. His eyes narrowed as he turned toward a shadowed corner. At first he saw nothing. Then slowly a pair of glowing eyes appeared. Low to the ground, then another and another. Out of the shadows stepped small figures. There were 5 of them, little girls. Their skin was not human. Their eyes were wide, some glowing faintly in the dark. Their arms were thin, and their clothes were torn like they had been running for days. They looked at Daniel with fear, yet also with hope. "Please," one of them whispered. Her voice shook as if every word cost her strength. "Help us." Daniel froze. He had seen many things in his travels. Pirates, slavers, mercenaries, but never a group of alien children begging like this. He looked around quickly, expecting a trap. But there was no one else, only these small girls, trembling and holding on to each other. "Where are your parents?" Daniel asked in a low voice. The oldest-looking girl, maybe 12 in human years, shook her head. "No parents, only cages. We escaped." Her words struck him like a blade. Cages, he knew what that meant. Slavers. People who saw lives as nothing more than property. Daniel's chest tightened. He looked at their thin faces. Their scared eyes, they were so small. Yet they had survived long enough to escape, but why come to him? Why reveal themselves to a stranger? Before he could ask, one of the younger girls stepped forward. She was barely taller than his waist. Her eyes glowed a soft violet in the dim light. "They will come," she whispered. "They will find us. Please hide us. You are human. You can fight." Daniel felt his heart beat faster. Someone was hunting them, and now he had been pulled into their nightmare. He glanced back at his ship. It was old, scratched. Barely enough to keep him alive. If he took them, if he protected them, whoever hunted them would come after him too. And he was only one man, one ship. But when he looked at them again, he saw no trick, no lie, only pure fear. They had run to him because he was the only one here, the only one who might listen. A sound broke the silence. Heavy footsteps echoing from the far end of the docking bay. Daniel's body tensed. He pulled out his pistol, aiming into the dark. The girls gasped and clung to each other, their faces pale. The oldest girl's voice was sharp. "They're here!" Daniel's instincts screamed at him to leave, to run. But his humanity chained his feet to the floor. He couldn't just walk away, not from children begging for help, not from eyes that carried so much pain. "Move," he whispered harshly, waving them toward his ship. "Now all of you." Quickly, the girls rushed toward the ramp of his ship, their bare feet silent against the cold metal. Daniel walked backward, gun raised. The footsteps grew louder. Closer, heavy like armored boots, a shadow moved at the far door. Large and broad, the hunters had arrived. Daniel fired a warning shot into the wall. The sound echoed like thunder. The shadow paused, but then kept coming. He knew he didn't have time. He turned and sprinted into his ship, slamming the ramp closed behind him. The girls huddled near the corner of the small cabin. Daniel ran to the pilot's chair. His hands flew across the controls, powering up engines that groaned in protest. Outside, the heavy footsteps turned into running. He could hear the clang of fists on the hull. "Hold on," he shouted as the ship shuddered. The engines roared to life. Smoke and sparks filled the docking bay. Then, with a violent jerk, the ship lifted. The station shrank behind them, its lights flickering like dying candles. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes sharp on the void ahead. The girls sat trembling, whispering prayers in their alien tongue. His heart pounded. He didn't know who those hunters were, or why these girls were so important. But he knew one thing. He had just made enemies far more dangerous than he could imagine, and now 5 little lives depended on him. The silence of space surrounded them, but inside the small ship, fear and hope clashed in the same breath. Daniel gripped the controls tighter. A simple choice had been made in the dark, one that would change everything. The ship rattled as it left the broken station behind. Daniel pushed the old controls harder than he should, praying the engines would not fail him now. His ship wasn't built for speed, but it was all he had behind him. The girls sat close together on the floor, their wide alien eyes fixed on him. Some still trembling, some whispering in their strange language. Their small hands clutched each other like letting go meant death. Daniel risked a glance back. He saw fear in their faces. But also something else, trust. They had thrown themselves into his hands without knowing him. That thought made his chest heavy. He had never asked to be anyone's savior, yet here he was. A loud beep from the console broke his thoughts. His radar blinked red. A small dot appeared. Someone had locked onto them. Daniel cursed under his breath. They had been tracked. He leaned forward and started adjusting the course. His eyes sharp, his ship wasn't strong enough to fight. The only way to survive was to stay ahead, hide or trick whoever was chasing them. He switched off most lights inside the ship, leaving only faint glow panels. The cabin turned dark. "Quiet," he whispered back to the girls. "Not a sound, do you understand?" The oldest girl nodded quickly. She pressed a finger to her lips, calming the younger ones. They huddled together like a small group of birds caught in a storm. Daniel cut the main thrusters and drifted into the void. The ship became a silent shadow. He used small bursts from side jets, barely enough to keep moving, but not enough to leave a long trail. Minutes passed like hours, sweat rolled down Daniel's forehead. His hands gripped the controls tight. The radar beeped again, closer this time. Someone was hunting them with precision. Whoever they were, they knew the stars well. Daniel's jaw tightened. This was no random patrol. This was a hunt. He lowered his voice. "Listen to me. Do they know you? Do they have a way to track you?" The oldest girl hesitated. Her lips trembled before she spoke. We had marks on us, symbols burned into our skin. They can see us anywhere." She pulled down the torn cloth on her arm. Glowing lines etched into her flesh like fire. Daniel's stomach turned cold. It wasn't just a chase, it was a leash. These children had been tagged like cattle. "Damn it," he muttered. He tapped the console, thinking fast. If they were tagged, then every signal, every ping, could lead the hunters right to them. He powered down almost everything. The beacon, the comms, even half the navigation. The ship went nearly blind, drifting in silence. The younger girls whimpered as the lights dimmed further. The air grew colder. Daniel looked back and softened his voice. "It's okay, this is how we stay safe, trust me." They nodded, though their small bodies still shivered. For a brief moment, the radar went quiet. No blinking dots, no sound. Daniel let out a slow breath. Maybe they had lost them. Then the ship shook. A distant boom echoed through the hull. Daniel's eyes snapped wide. A spotlight cut across the void behind them. A massive shape appeared, an alien ship, larger, faster. Its hull painted in strange symbols that glowed like blood. The hunters had found them. The girls screamed softly, hiding their faces. Daniel pushed the thrusters back on. The ship roared. He swung hard to the left, the old engines cried out. Warning lights flashed across his screen, but the ship still moved, lasers sliced past them. Thin red lines cutting across the black sky. One hit close, shaking the cabin. Sparks fell from the ceiling. The girls cried louder. Daniel gritted his teeth. Not today. He pulled a sharp dive toward a field of drifting rocks. A graveyard of old asteroids and debris if he could weave through them. Maybe the larger ship couldn't follow as easily. The chase turned deadly. His small vessel darted through sharp rocks, sliding between narrow gaps. Metal scraped the sides, warning alarms screamed. But Daniel's focus was iron. He had lived through worse. He told himself that again and again. Behind them, the alien ship fired, each shot lighting the dark void. Rocks exploded, pieces spinning like knives. One chunk slammed into Daniel's hull, making the whole ship groan, but it held inside the cabin. The girls clung to each other, their glowing eyes wide with terror. The oldest shouted, "You'll die if you keep this, stop!" Daniel barked back, "Better die running than chained, you understand me?" His voice cut like steel, and for a moment, even the girls went silent. The alien hunters kept firing, but Daniel twisted and turned, his ship slipping through cracks too small for the giant vessel. Sparks lit his face, sweat dripping down. His old pistol rattled at his side with every shake. Finally, after what felt like forever, the radar cleared again. The alien ship had slowed. Unable to push through the rock maze, Daniel pushed deeper into the asteroid field. Engines low, hiding once more in the shadows. Silence fell. Only the sound of weak breathing and the hum of the ship. Daniel leaned back in the chair. His hands shaking now, his body wanted to collapse, but his eyes stayed sharp. He couldn't relax, not yet. He looked back at the girls. They stared at him like he was something more than human, like he was a shield they never expected. The smallest one, her violet eyes glowing, whispered softly, Why would you help us? You don't even know us." Daniel's chest felt heavy. He didn't answer at first. He only looked at them. 5 small lives thrown into his care, hunted by monsters, branded like animals. Finally he spoke, his voice low, steady, "Because someone has to." And in that moment, deep in the dark void, the silent chase wasn't just survival anymore. It was the beginning of something far bigger than Daniel could imagine. Daniel's ship floated deep inside the asteroid field. Its engines hummed low. He had powered down most systems again, hiding like a shadow among the drifting rocks. Outside, giant stones turned slowly in the void, blocking scanners and eyes alike. The little alien girls huddled together on the floor, wrapped in thin blankets Daniel had pulled from the back of his cabin. Their glowing eyes peeked at him, fear still painted across their faces. Daniel rubbed his tired eyes. His mind kept replaying the chase, the flashes of lasers, the booming sound of rocks breaking apart, the heavy breath of the children as they clung to life. He had saved them for now, but for how long? He opened a small ration pack and placed it near them. "Eat," he said quietly. "You need strength." The oldest girl picked up the food, tore it in small pieces, and passed it to the younger ones before taking a bite herself. Her movements were careful, protective, Daniel noticed. She acted more like a guardian than a child. After some silence, she finally spoke. "You should not have helped us," Daniel frowned. "Why do you say that?" "They will never stop," she whispered. Her glowing eyes looked down at her marked skin. "We were made to be found. We cannot run forever." Daniel leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Made? What do you mean?" The girl hesitated, then lifted her sleeve again, showing the glowing mark burned into her flesh. "These are not just marks, they are chains. They were put on us the day we were born. They can track us no matter where we go." Daniel's gut twisted. He had seen slavers before, cruel men who branded people. But this was different. These marks glowed, alive with strange power. It wasn't just cruelty. It was technology mixed with something darker. Before Daniel could ask more, the second oldest girl spoke suddenly, her voice trembling. "We were not meant to be children." Her words made Daniel freeze. "We were grown, shaped, trained. They wanted us for war," the youngest ones whimpered. Covering their ears, the older girl quickly hushed them. But Daniel had already heard enough. His jaw clenched, his eyes hardened, he turned away, gripping the edge of the console so tightly his knuckles went white. He hated this galaxy sometimes. Hated how many times he had seen innocent lives twisted for greed and power. But then another voice broke the silence. A small but firm one, the violet-eyed girl, the one who had begged him the hardest back at the station. She looked at Daniel with tears glowing like stars. "They will come because of me," she whispered. I called them once." Daniel spun, his eyes sharp. "What do you mean you called them?" Her lip trembled. "When we were escaping, I was afraid. They promised me safety if I told them where we were. I sent a signal. I thought they would let the others live if I obeyed." Her small hands shook, but then they laughed. They kept coming anyway. The cabin went silent. Every girl stared at her, some with shock, some with hurt. The violet-eyed girl broke down, hiding her face in her hands. Daniel's stomach felt heavy. Betrayal. That was why the hunters had found them so fast. The enemy hadn't tracked them at first, they had been told. He closed his eyes for a long moment, rage burned in him. But so did something else, understanding. She was a child, trapped, scared. He knew what fear could do. It made even the strongest desperate. The oldest girl hissed at her. "You doomed us. You brought them to us." Daniel raised his hand, stopping her. His voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Enough." He looked at the violet-eyed girl, still crying softly. "She made a mistake. But she's here now. She ran with you. She begged for help. That means she chose again." The girls went quiet, their breathing shaky. Daniel stood and walked to the small window, staring at the endless rocks. "The hunters will not stop. Not for chains, not for signals, not for anything," he said. "So we have to stop them first," the oldest girl whispered. Almost in disbelief. "You would fight them?" Daniel's eyes stayed on the void, his reflection staring back cold and determined. "I don't like running, and I don't like being hunted." He turned, his gaze burning. If they want you, they'll have to come through me first. But even as he said the words, a sharp alarm rang from the console. The radar lit up again, 3 signals this time. Fast and closing, the betrayal's price had not ended. More ships had followed. The violet-eyed girl sobbed harder. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Daniel rushed to the controls, his hands moving fast, his heart hammered. This was no longer a simple chase. This was a battle they could not avoid. He powered up weapons, weak as they were. The old cannons on his ship had not fired in years. He prayed they would still work. The girls clung to each other again, fear returning. The oldest whispered, "We should never have asked him. He will die for us." Daniel heard her, but he didn't turn. His eyes were locked on the stars ahead where 3 hunters moved closer. "Maybe," he muttered, voice like stone, "but if I die, it won't be in chains." The engines roared back to life. The ship shook. Daniel gripped the controls. His tired eyes lit with fire. The chase was over. The fight was about to begin. The ship rattled as Daniel pushed the engines to full. The 3 hunter ships glowed on the radar, moving closer. They were faster, stronger, and hungry for their prize. Inside the cabin, the little girls clung to each other, their glowing eyes wide with terror. Daniel's jaw tightened. His old vessel was no warship, but he refused to let them be taken back in chains. The first enemy ship opened fire. Red streaks of energy sliced across the void. Daniel pulled the controls hard to the right. His ship groaned, metal plates shaking. Sparks burst from the ceiling as a blast scraped their hull. The youngest girl screamed. Daniel barked over the noise. "Stay down. Hold on to something." He swung the ship through the drifting rocks, weaving between shadows and broken stones. But the hunters didn't back off. They pressed closer, firing in patterns, trying to herd him into a trap. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He had seen this tactic before. They wanted to corner him, force him to surrender. He clenched his teeth. His hands moved fast across the controls. Firing his ship's ancient cannons, 2 weak shots flew out, barely scratching the shields of the enemy. The hunters didn't even flinch. The oldest alien girl whispered in fear, "We can't win. They're too strong." Daniel ignored her. His mind raced. If he couldn't outfight them, he would have to outthink them. He searched the rocks for cover, for a blind spot, for anything. Suddenly, the violet-eyed girl stood, her small hands shaking, her glowing eyes brighter than before. "I can stop them," she said softly. Daniel turned sharply. "Sit down. You'll get yourself killed." But she shook her head, her voice trembling yet firm. "They marked me. They made me. I can feel them. I can reach them." Before Daniel could stop her, she pressed her glowing hands against the cold floor. The lights in the cabin flickered. The air seemed to thrum with energy. The girls gasped. Even Daniel froze. A strange pulse rippled through the ship like a heartbeat. The radar flickered wildly. The closest hunter ship staggered, its weapons shutting off for a moment. "What the—" Daniel muttered, his eyes widened. She wasn't bluffing. She had some kind of power, something tied to the very marks they had burned into her. The violet-eyed girl strained, her small body shaking. Sweat rolled down her face as she whispered, "I can make them see something else. I can blind them." Daniel's instincts screamed at him. This was dangerous. Too dangerous, but he saw the radar blinking, the hunter ship slowing for just a moment. That moment was enough. He slammed the thrusters, driving his ship into a sharp dive through a narrow crack in the rocks. Lasers flew past, missing by meters. His ship scraped metal against stone, but they slipped through. Behind them, the hunters roared, their comms flooding with angry signals, but their shots grew wild, unfocused, as if they couldn't see clearly anymore. Daniel glanced at the girl. Her violet glow lit the cabin like a flame. She looked fragile yet powerful. "Keep it up just a little longer," he urged. "We're almost through," she nodded weakly, her small hands trembling. The marks on her arms blazed brighter. Each time they pulsed, the hunters' ships wavered, shields flickering, weapons shutting down. The other girls stared in awe, whispering, She was the strongest. That's why they wanted her most." Daniel's stomach clenched. This was no accident. These children weren't just prisoners. They were experiments, weapons in the making. And this girl, the youngest looking, the smallest, was the key, but power had a cost. Her body shook violently, her eyes dimming. Daniel rushed from his chair, catching her before she collapsed. Her small chest heaved with shallow breaths. "You're burning yourself out," Daniel muttered, laying her down gently. He looked into her glowing eyes, now flickering weakly. "Don't do that again unless I tell you," she whispered, voice faint. Wanted to help. Daniel swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. He wasn't angry, he was afraid. Afraid of what had been done to her. Afraid of what she was becoming. But there was no time to think. The radar screamed again. One hunter ship had broken through the interference. It was closing fast, charging weapons. Daniel ran back to the controls, his eyes burned with fury. They wanted these children as weapons. But they didn't deserve chains. They deserved a chance to live. He swung the ship toward a massive asteroid. A giant slab of rock spinning slow. He flew close, closer than anyone sane would dare. The enemy followed, hungry for the kill. At the last second, Daniel pulled up. Skimming the rock's surface, the hunter ship tried to follow, but its larger frame clipped the stone. The impact tore across its hull, fire exploding outward. The vessel spun out, crippled, the cabin filled with cheers from the girls, their voices bright with hope for the first time. But Daniel's eyes stayed cold on the radar. 2 more signals remained, and the violet-eyed girl was too weak to use her power again. He knew this was only the beginning. He leaned forward, hands steady, voice low and firm. "They think you're weapons," he muttered. "But to me, you're children. And I'll burn the stars before I hand you back to them." The girls fell silent, their glowing eyes wide. They had seen many cruel faces in their short lives, but never one like his. Daniel was only human, yet in that moment, he seemed stronger than all the hunters chasing them. The void stretched on, dangerous and endless, but something had changed in the dark. The girls were no longer just helpless. The human was no longer just a traveler. And together, they were about to become something the galaxy would never forget. The asteroid field was behind them now, but the chase had not ended. 2 hunter ships still followed, their glowing hulls cutting through the dark like predators tracking prey. Daniel's old vessel shook with every burst of speed. Its engines straining, the girls sat silently, their eyes wide. The violet-eyed one lay weak on the floor, her breathing shallow. Daniel had wrapped her in a blanket, checking on her between every violent turn. She had saved them once, but her body could not handle it again. Daniel's chest felt heavy. His ship was slower, his weapons weaker, and his enemies endless. He could keep running. But he knew the truth. They would never stop. Not until they had the girls back in chains. For the first time since this began, Daniel stopped thinking about escape. He thought about fighting. He tapped the console, pulling up the old defense systems. Rusty cannons, weak shields, a small store of missiles. Nothing compared to the hunters, but he had lived long enough to know one thing. Machines didn't win battles. People did. He adjusted the course toward a dying star nearby. Its light burned dim and red. Its gravity pulled like a monster waiting for prey. No sane pilot flew too close. But Daniel wasn't aiming for safe, he was aiming for desperate. The oldest alien girl noticed the change in direction. Her voice shook. "Where are you taking us?" Daniel's eyes stayed on the burning star ahead. His voice was calm but hard. "To a place they won't expect me to stand." The girls looked at each other in confusion. They didn't understand, but Daniel didn't explain. His mind was sharp, already planning. He would lure the hunters close to the star, use its pull against them. The radar beeped. The hunters were closing. One fired, a shot blazing past. Another hit their shield, shaking the cabin. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The girls screamed. Daniel shouted back, "Hold on! Don't move from that corner." He swung the ship hard, weaving toward the star. The hunters followed, confident. They thought he was running blind, but Daniel's eyes were steady. His hands moved with the experience of a man who had cheated death too many times. As the star grew closer, heat filled the cabin, warning alarms blared. The girls covered their ears. Daniel ignored them. His focus was iron. He flipped open the panel for the missile controls. He had 3 left, 3 chances to make this stand count. He aimed at the nearest hunter. His finger hovered over the trigger, but instead of firing straight, he smiled. He fired wide, letting the missile streak past the enemy ship. The hunters mocked him over comms, their alien voices full of laughter. But Daniel wasn't aiming for them. He was aiming for the gravity. The missile looped, caught by the star's pull, spinning back like a thrown spear. It smashed into the hunter's side. The ship burst into flames, tearing apart in the pull of the dying sun. The girls gasped, their glowing eyes wide. One whispered, "He missed." No, he planned it. Daniel didn't look back. He already had his eyes on the second ship. It was closing faster, weapons charging. He fired the second missile, this time low, letting it dip toward the star before rising again. The hunter tried to dodge, but the star's pull bent its path. The explosion rocked the void, ripping chunks from the enemy's hull. But the second hunter didn't fall. It limped, but it kept coming. Rage burning in its engines, it fired wildly. One blast tore across Daniel's hull. The ship screamed, alarms flashing red. A panel exploded, throwing sparks across the cabin. The girls shrieked. The youngest cried, "We'll die." Daniel grit his teeth, blood running from a cut on his forehead. He shouted, "Not if I stand first." He lined up the last missile. His hand shook. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. His eyes burned as he stared at the final hunter. The star glowed behind it like a demon's eye. He waited until the enemy was close. Too close to escape, then he fired. The missile streaked through the void. The hunter tried to dodge, but its damaged thrusters faltered. The explosion swallowed it, fire and metal ripping apart. The blast carried into the pull of the star, dragging the wreck down into the burning light. Silence filled the cabin. Only the hum of the weak engines remained. Daniel slumped back in his chair, his breath heavy. His ship was scarred. His body bruised, but he was alive, and so were they. The girls stared at him with awe. The oldest whispered, "You fought them. You didn't run." Daniel turned slowly, his tired eyes meeting theirs. Running doesn't end a hunt, standing does. The girls fell silent, their small bodies trembling. Not from fear now, but from something new. Hope. The violet-eyed girl stirred, her weak voice barely rising. "You stood for us." Daniel knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "And I'll do it again as many times as it takes." Outside, the wreckage of 2 hunter ships drifted into the pull of the dying star, swallowed by its endless fire. But Daniel knew this was no victory. The galaxy was wide and their enemies were many. This was only the first stand. Still, inside the battered ship, something had changed. The hunted were no longer only prey, and the human who chose to fight was no longer just a traveler. He was now a shield, a line the hunters would regret crossing. And somewhere deep in the void, other enemies were already stirring. Angry and eager, the fight was far from over. But for tonight, they had survived. The wreckage of the hunter ships drifted into the burning star until nothing remained but dust and fire. Daniel's ship limped away, scarred and smoking. The alarms had gone silent, but the cabin still carried the smell of burnt wires and fear. The girls sat close together, silent. Their glowing eyes kept flicking between the human at the controls and the stars outside. They had seen him fight, seen him stand, and survive when no one else would have. But silence weighed heavy. Not all fear was gone. Daniel wiped blood from his forehead, patched the cut with a strip of cloth. His body ached, but he forced himself to keep the ship steady. He glanced at the children huddled in the corner. His chest tightened. They were looking at him differently now, half in awe, half in doubt. Finally, the oldest girl spoke. Her voice was quiet but sharp. "Why do you help us?" Daniel blinked, turning toward her. "Because you asked." Her eyes narrowed, glowing faintly in the dim light. "No one helps without reason. Not out here." The word struck Daniel harder than a laser blast. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. His voice came low, tired but steady. "You're right, most don't." "But I'm not most." The oldest girl didn't look convinced. She whispered to the others in her alien tongue. The younger ones nodded nervously. Their eyes carried fear again. Not of hunters, but of him. Daniel's jaw clenched. He understood. They had lived their whole lives in cages, lied to, used, betrayed. Why should they trust a stranger, even if he was human? The violet-eyed girl stirred weakly. Her voice broke the silence. "He saved us. Twice." The oldest snapped back. "Or maybe he just wants us for himself. Maybe he'll sell us to another master." Daniel stood, his boots heavy on the metal floor. His voice thundered, "Enough!" The cabin shook with his rage. The girls flinched, pulling closer together. But Daniel's face softened as quickly as it had hardened. He lowered his voice. "I'm not your enemy. I don't need to own anyone. I don't need chains to feel strong." He pointed at his chest. "I chose to fight because I could. That's all." The girls stared at him, silent. Their eyes searched for lies. But they found none. Still, the seed of doubt remained. Trust was a fragile thing, and theirs had been broken too many times before. Suddenly, the radar beeped again. Daniel's stomach sank. A massive signal appeared, far larger than the hunters before. The display pulsed red as the shape grew closer. The girls gasped. The oldest whispered in terror, "It's him!" Daniel frowned. "Who?" Their voices trembled together. "The master of chains." Through the window, the stars bent as a colossal warship emerged. Its black hull stretched like a floating fortress, glowing marks carved across its surface. Each mark pulsed the same way as the burns on the girl's arms. Daniel's eyes hardened. This was no patrol, no simple hunter. This was the one who had owned them, who had forged their chains. The violet-eyed girl whimpered, covering her face. "He will take us back. He always takes us back." Daniel placed a hand on the console. His ship was too damaged, too weak. The cannons were nearly dead, his missiles gone, his shields barely holding. Against a monster like this, he had nothing. But he couldn't show fear. Not now, not with 5 small lives staring at him. He straightened his back, his voice calm. Then he'll have to try harder than that. The warship sent a transmission. A deep alien voice filled the cabin, smooth and cruel. "Human, you have something that belongs to me. Return them and I will let you live. Refuse, and I will break you." The girls trembled. Some looked at Daniel with pleading eyes, others with doubt. What if he gave them up? What if he traded their lives for his own safety? Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked at each girl one by one. Their fear cut deeper than any wound. He had to choose his words carefully. Finally, he leaned toward the comms, his voice like iron. "They don't belong to you. They never did, and if you want them back, you'll have to come through me." The warship's silence lasted only a breath before laughter echoed through the comms. Cold, cruel laughter. "One human ship, broken and weak, you dare stand against me? Then I will show these children what becomes of hope." The signal cut. The massive warship began to charge its weapons. The stars outside turned red with its glow. The girls screamed, clinging to each other. Their glowing marks pulsed faster. As if responding to the warship itself, the violet-eyed girl cried out, holding her arms, "He's calling us!" "The marks. They burn." Daniel rushed to her, gripping her shoulders. His voice was firm. "Look at me. You're not his, do you hear me?" "Not anymore." Her glowing eyes met his, tears streaming. "But I feel him inside my head." Daniel gritted his teeth. His mind raced. He couldn't outgun that warship, not with his ship, but maybe there was another way. He had survived this long with tricks, not strength, and now he had something the enemy had not expected. Children who were more than just victims. He stood tall, facing the massive ship outside. His jaw set like stone. "Then we'll break his chains," Daniel muttered. "One link at a time." The girls looked at him, their glowing eyes wide. Some with fear, some with hope for the first time. They saw not just a man, but a human who refused to bow. The cost of trust had been heavy. Doubt still lingered, but in this moment, with a giant enemy looming and nowhere to run, they began to believe. Because Daniel wasn't running anymore, he was standing, and the galaxy itself would feel the weight of that stand. The massive warship loomed before them. Its black surface glowed with burning chains, every symbol alive with cruel power. Daniel's small ship looked like a grain of dust against its shadow. Inside the cabin, fear was thick. The little girls clung together, their glowing eyes reflecting the light of the enemy's weapons charging. The violet-eyed one shivered, her hands pressed against her marked arms. Her voice broke. "He's pulling us. He's pulling us back." Daniel gripped her shoulders firmly, his voice low but sharp. "You're stronger than him. You don't belong to him. You belong to yourself." The oldest girl shook her head, her voice trembling. "You can't fight him, he's too strong. Even whole fleets run from him." Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew the truth. This wasn't a fight he could win by force. His weapons were gone, his ship damaged. But surrender was death, and running was no longer an option. The comms crackled again. The warlord's deep voice slithered through the cabin. "Human, give them to me. You cannot protect them. They are mine, made for me. You are nothing." Daniel's hand hovered over the comms. His heart hammered. For a moment he thought of lying, of pretending to surrender to buy time. But then he looked at the children, at their thin arms, their glowing chains, their wide, desperate eyes, and his choice was made. He pressed the comms button. His voice thundered with a fire that shook even the trembling girls. "I am human, I don't bow. If you want them, come take them. But you'll find out what happens when you push a human too far." Silence followed. Then cruel laughter filled the void. "So be it." The warship's weapons lit the stars red. Energy gathered like a storm. One shot would end them. Daniel knew it. But then the violet-eyed girl sat up, her body weak but her gaze burning. "He made me, but he does not own me if I use the power he gave. I can break it." The other girls gasped, shaking their heads. No! It will kill you. Daniel crouched in front of her, meeting her glowing eyes. Listen to me, you're not alone. You don't have to do this by yourself. If you fall, I'll be there to catch you. She trembled but nodded. Her hands began to glow, brighter than ever before. The chains burned across her skin, but instead of pain, she pushed it outward, turning the fire back on its master. The warship shuddered, its glowing marks flickered. The cruel voice roared in anger. No! Obey me, you are mine! The violet-eyed girl screamed. But she didn't stop. Her small body shook, her eyes blazing like stars. And then the other girls joined one by one, pressing their glowing hands to the floor. Their chains burned, but they fought together. Daniel stood tall behind them, his voice cut through the chaos. You're not his weapons, you're not his slaves. Your children, be free. The cabin exploded with light. The marks on their arms shattered like glass. The warship outside convulsed, its glowing chains cracking. Energy rippled across its hull. The great fortress trembled, its own power turning against it. The warlord's voice screamed in fury. Impossible! You are nothing without me. Daniel's voice rose like a hammer. They're more without you than they ever were with you. The warship's core blazed too bright. The girls' combined strength tore the bindings apart. With one final scream, the vessel split, fire erupting across its surface. Chunks of burning metal drifted into the void, swallowed by the endless dark. Silence followed. Only the hum of Daniel's failing engines remained. The children collapsed, exhausted but alive, their glowing chains gone, leaving only faint scars. Daniel sank to one knee, his chest heavy. He looked at the wreck of the warship fading into the void, a monster defeated, not by fleets or armies, but by children who chose freedom, and a human who refused to let them fall. The oldest girl crawled toward him, her glowing eyes wet with tears. You stood against him. Even when we doubted you, Daniel smiled faintly. Though his face was tired, I wasn't standing alone. You fought too. The violet-eyed girl reached up weakly, her small hand grabbing his sleeve. Her voice was barely a whisper. We're free. Because of you. Daniel placed his hand over hers, his voice low but steady. No. You're free because you chose to be. Remember that, the girls cried softly, not with fear this time, but with relief. They curled around each other, finally safe, their glowing eyes dimming as sleep pulled them down. Daniel leaned back in the pilot's chair, his body broken, his ship half dead, but his spirit burning. He stared at the stars, whispering to himself, if the galaxy wants a fight, then it's going to learn what it means to fight a human. And in that quiet moment, as the small ship drifted through the endless void, the choice that changed everything had been made. A group of broken children were free, a human had stood where no one else would, and the galaxy, though it did not yet know, had just been changed forever.